Welcome to a Patreon exclusive episode of Page 121. This for the Patreons who have helped me keep this channel on the air, so this little reward I'm doing. Today we're going to take a look at In Champions, the Ultimate Metamorph. We're going to take a little look at this book, but generally we're going to look at Metamorphs in Champions. One of the more problematic builds in Champions. Metamorphs can be very expensive to build and very difficult to build. You're definitely going to need your GM's help with it. But this book is a big step in the right direction. This is a 5th edition book for Champions. I play 4th edition, but honestly the difference between 4th and 5th edition is negligible. I've never even bothered to study what the actual differences are. I know that enough of the stuff is the same that I've never had a problem adapting one for the other. We still play 4th. But this is 5th. We're going to take a quick look through parts of this book, and I'm going to discuss my experiences with Metamorphs, that is shape changers, in Champions. So a quick word about metamorph. Metamorph means multi-form. Meta means multi and morph means form. So you can have different shapes. This does not necessarily mean you are just a shapeshifter. Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four with his stretching ability would be considered a metamorph because he changes his shape. As we see in the guy on the cover here, this guy's just stretching. This woman is stretching also, changing her hand into blades, and this woman is turning into some kind of werewolf. These can be problematic in Champions. They're very, very expensive. We take a look at the back here, and it says, time for a change. I always like a little good pun like that. And it talks about ranging from supervillains who can copy anyone's appearance or powers, like Mystique, to werewolves and other lycanthropes, to robots with adjustable body parts. So like Terminator. Metamorphs are expensive in Champions because as the Champions rules are set up, you get your base form for free. So if you're a human, for instance, and you can turn into looking like other creatures, you get your base human form, no problem. But if you're going to turn into other creatures, a la Mystique, and this is more Mystique from the comic books, and at that from the 80s comics, not where she can turn into Diamond and all these other strange, or is that Mystique? I don't remember. But Mystique gained a bunch of weird, freaky powers over the years. I'm talking about just her metamorph abilities. Mystique did not gain mass at all. So that I have an old comic book where she's mimicking Nick Fury, but she has to keep her coat on because she's stretched so thin underneath to equate his size. She doesn't have the body mass for it. So that's kind of interesting, but it becomes a problem. So a shape changer like Mystique wouldn't be that bad because she's simply mimicking a form. But if you wanted to go to a Reed Richards character with stretching, you now have to buy the stretching power. You have to buy the ability to reach, so you have to be able to buy your physical attack, which would be your punch, but it would be usable at range, so you have to pay the penalty for range and things like that. And anybody who's played Champions knows these penalties add up fast. So a metamorph can be a quick problem. One character I had in my game years and years ago, this is back in the early 80s, Hannibal King is a minor character from the old Tomb of Dracula comic book. And he was a person who'd been bitten and become a vampire. But he chose never to drink human blood, and he worked as a private detective. So he was Hannibal King, vampire detective. My player wanted to be that guy, so he wanted to be a vampire. Vampires are metamorphs. They can turn into wolves, bats, and mist. He had to pay for each of those individual forms, in addition to the enhanced vampire strength, the regeneration. But he also got significant weaknesses as a vampire, such as to sunlight. So that helps offset. So when you're doing a metamorph, you have to be ready to go ahead as the GM and just say, okay, my campaign is based around 350 active points, which is how you design in Champions. I'm not going to worry too much about that. I'm going to design you up a character. I'm going to keep you in the power levels rather than worry about the points themselves. Champions has a neat system where you pay for all your character abilities through points, and then you offset them with disadvantages to your powers or with different liabilities like a secret identity, dependent non-player characters, some kind of weakness to Hannibal King, to sunlight. And again, you would need a good GM to help you build this guy. So looking inside here, what this book does for us, and this book's available still through Hero Games. I believe it's also available as a PDF download on RPG Drive-Thru RPG, is this gives you how you're going to be changing. Are you going to be a cosmetic metamorph, like a Raven type, a minor one, or a major one? And then give you the background. And what these series of books did, the Ultimate series, here's some new skills you can use as the metamorph, and then we have all these different clumps of powers that you can adapt for your character. So they kind of did all the math for you. So we have density increase. You're just becoming more massive. The old Vision in the comic books had density increase. I guess even in the films he had. And then I'm going to just skip around a little bit. Desolidification. The Vision definitely had that. So would he be a metamorph? No, I would just have him by the desolidification. Growth. Growth can be a big, big problem. You want to have somebody like Colossal Boy from the Legion of Superheroes. He has to buy growth and all the bonuses and cons that come with that. And it can run into a lot of points. One of the weaknesses in the champion system, in my opinion, is the way the system runs, where you can take disadvantages to offset some of your costs and everything. Is a properly designed Batman costs more than a properly designed Superman. Because Batman has so many skills and has to pay so many points for those skills. And Batman's got his gadgets, he's got his Batmobile, he's got the Batcave. Even giving Superman the Fortress of Solitude, Batman is still more expensive to build than Superman, because Superman only has powers under the yellow sun, which gives him a discount on the powers and things like that. I wear a Doc Savage shirt at the opening of this. Doc Savage I designed one time. He was the hero that they based Batman on, and a properly designed Doc Savage is more expensive than a properly designed Superman. So heroes get really expensive with skills in this game, and you can run the exact same thing with metamorphs. So Reed Richards wants to turn from his stretching form. He wants to squeeze down into a ball and bounce away to safety. Well, he's got to pay for that shapeshift. And in Champions, he can build it into something called an elemental control or a multiform. A multiform basically is you take all the points, you put them in a block, and he can only use part of the block. In other words, it's like a little battery pack for him. So if I have 60 points in my multiform, and my Reed Richards wants to turn into a ball, I would have the power under my multiform that would give me my ability to turn into a ball. But I could only be the ball at that time. I couldn't use any of my other multiform. And then elemental control did much the same thing, but I might be able to mix and match those kind of things. So if I wanted to be Reed Richards again, but I wanted to glide, maybe I have that under an elemental control where I turn my body out like a big sail and I just start to glide. So Reed Richards is actually a very expensive Champions character. I keep talking about him because my son Adam announced the other day that his new Champions character is going to be a Reed Richards type, somebody who can stretch. So that's got me thinking. That's why I pulled this book out. Shrinking. This can also be kind of problematic, but this power is actually drawn out of the actual powers in Champions. So that's, even though it's a shapeshift, it's not that tough a shapeshift to deal with. Shrinking and growth are just not that tough. And then we go to power modifiers. So you can have different limitations. This is just how Champions works. As I said, I'm just showing, okay, disadvantages. You can pay for some of your powers through disadvantages. Ideally in Champions, if I have 350 active points, I get 100 of those for free. Everything else I've got to pay for. I have to offset 250 points through disadvantages. So I can only be in my form for a limited amount of time. I have Aunt May lurking around the back with my secret identity. Those can be cumbersome. So what we used to do, if we were having a higher point game, like somebody wanted to play a Metamorph, I would just give him 200 or 300 points as his base, and then make him take 150 or so points of disadvantages. That's just a good way to keep a Champions campaign going. I've always found that the Champions campaign is best based on dice of damage thrown and then your defenses. We play on a 14 die 6 base game, so our average dice is going to be 14 die 6, and our defenses are going to be anywhere from 25 to 35 physical defense and energy defense. And then maybe at the high end of that would be a 40 physical defense and energy defense. So we keep it limited where you can be hit and take damage. You can hit somebody and do damage. But we found that works better than worrying about the power points that you're paying for all your characters. As long as you stay in the same damage brackets, that's a better gauge, in my opinion, as a game master. I've been making Champions characters for 40 years. So I know which way I like to do, and that's based on damage. So here we have some more of the book. We've got the stretcher, guy throwing the punch. Just Champions is something where you cannot just have somebody go ahead and make a character and walk it into your game. You as the game master have to be involved. So Champions, in my opinion, is the original Session 0 game. I would always sit with my players, talk about the character concept or whatever, and then we'd either sit and design it together if we had time, or once I had the concept, in my spare time, I would design the character up. Then we get together again before we started playing, I would explain the character to them. That was the way we almost always did it. I was always the main GM in Champions, and that was just the way we did it. But I had 2 or 3 friends that were really comic fans, so we'd sit down and we'd design characters just for fun in our spare time. I miss that. I haven't seen either of those guys in years. So there you go. That's really, you can get into avian powers, insect powers, anything you can think you can do under Champions. And I've always liked that about this. And I especially liked hypersenses. You want to be Daredevil? There you go. Intangibility powers. There's lots of different ways you can do it. And then these are different packages you can buy. So you want size alteration. If you want gigantic muscles, it adds plus 20 strength as you grow. So these books are fantastic time savers for the busy game master who doesn't want to have to sit and reinvent the wheel every single time somebody wants to play a Metamorph. You can go ahead and just go to a book like this and use it. Now, Champions is in the 6th iteration. Champions 6 is still alive. And they made some changes to the elemental control and the multi-power and things like that. That's fine. If you're playing 6th, you're going to have to take a look at that. And some of the stuff in these books will not cross over because of those changes. I play 4th, and I use a lot of stuff for 5th. And 4th and 5th are very compatible. So I do recommend that edition just for that. 6th is because it's a living, growing game. I have no idea what their release schedule is. I haven't seen anything from Champions in a while. I don't know if they're still releasing new books or not, but I know 6 is the current iteration of this game. So there you have it. Just a real quick look at the Ultimate Metamorph and shape changes in your game, a staple in pretty much any science fiction or comic book type game. And be ready. You're going to have to answer a lot of questions, and even once you've designed the character, even if you designed it yourself and have everything dialed in, once you're actually on the table playing, you're going to have to make a few decisions on the fly. And my thing often is, okay, we're not going to worry about that in this game. You have the power because it's something I missed. You can use the power, and then we'll figure out how to pay for it between now and next game. That's how I usually do it to keep Champions going. I'm hoping, by the way, to do a live combat, not live, but an actual play of Champions. As I did last year, the big combat over $8. I'm hoping to actually do an entire game with all of my players playing their characters and a big old city fight with a bunch of bad guys. So hopefully that's coming soon to the regular channel. So that's all I've got to say today. I want to thank all the patrons who are watching. I appreciate your support. And any suggestions for future videos, go ahead and just leave them in the comments. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time on Patreon, page 121.